Guys.
Coming in at number 10, we have Head in the Ceiling. Oh holy moly, I do not want this. Absolute do not want. This dirty baby head with blue eyes piercing through the muck was found in the ceiling of a property in New York, now home to the Tenement Museum. 97 Orchard Street in southern Manhattan used to be a family home, so it stands to reason that there may be relics of former residents hidden away. That to me is cool and everything. I love history. I'd be really keen to learn a bit more about who used to live there, but I really do draw the line at rotting toy heads, which I think is a pretty understandable boundary. Speaking of rotting toy heads, what, I pray, is this hellish apparition at number 9? We have a mouse. Out of the house. Good people of Reddit, what say you? DGem posted this image of a badly treated toy mouse with one eye. One pink eye that seems to bore down right into your very soul. They wrote, "Scary toy I found looking in my window," and if that's true, I'm both appalled and horrified. What was it doing looking in your window? The comments were also pretty great. One person wrote, "I'm the one who knocks," a reference to Breaking Bad, and I do not want that to come knocking. Ronan's Eyes Only wrote, "If that toy was a personal toy to you or your kids, I would say Voodoo." Voodoo Mouse. Actually, does sound like a great band name though. Voodoo Mouse. I saw a mouse. Where? There on the stair. Where on the stair? Right there. A little mouse with evil intent. He's hell-bent on pain. It's a song I wrote for you right there about that mouse. Thank you, you're welcome. Coming in at number 8, we have The Old Classroom. Bros of Decay is a YouTube channel with just over 100,000 subscribers, and it is fronted by Flemish brothers Leslie and Geordie, who love urban adventuring. And I can't blame them. I love all kinds of adventuring, especially urban. In December 2017, they explored an old abandoned elementary school and found old books and old toys, which is pretty spooky to watch. In the video description, they wrote, "All the toys of the kids were still inside the building, along with the pictures of the students and everything. We could relive the children's memories whilst exploring this school." Okay, here are a few of my favourite clips.
It says here, we learn Dutch. It's a language book, a Dutch language book.
So an old book bag and a few books, to me that's pretty interesting. The fear for me comes when they come across a whole load of toys, which is cool. Also, Duplo, yay!
Yeah, this is sort of Lego, but for kids, small, it's a little bit bigger so they can...
It's called Duplo.
But then they find this.
There's a doll over here. And above it is a beautiful drawing of a kid.
No to Dirty Face Doll. We've already talked about this. To be honest though, these guys do seem so nice and friendly that it's hard to be that scared. You should check them out though. I like their videos. I'm not necessarily sure if we would call these toys. Are they dolls? Are they voodoo dolls? Whatever they are a terrifying mystery still to this day at number 7. In June 1836, a group of teenage boys went out hunting for rabbits on Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh, one of my favourite cities in the world. What they found was a scary mystery, and it still is a scary mystery today. Time has not revealed all. They found 17 wooden coffins arranged in rows. When they opened them up, they found matching 17 dressed wooden dolls with open eyes staring back at them. Freaky. From investigation, it seems that the coffins had been placed at different intervals in time over the past few years, so it wasn't just a mass tiny doll coffin parade. The media at the time were all over it, and they started calling them fairy coffins, and there were rumours as to what their purpose was. Some people said that they were memorials for murder victims, but the most popular theory of all, as I'm sure you can imagine, was witchcraft. The Scotsman newspaper, which is still around today, wrote an article on the discovery saying, "Our own opinion would be, had we not some years ago abjured witchcraft and demonology, that there are still some of the weird sisters hovering about Mushat's cairn or the Windy Gowl, who retain their ancient power to work the spells of death by entombing the likeness of those they wish to destroy." Ugh. I mean, I'm all for a bit of vengeance, but entombing the likeness of people you wish to destroy? You've gone too far. Another mystery up next. This one is a teddy bear mystery at number 6. We have the 134-year-old tomb. In Hope Valley Cemetery in Adelaide, Australia, there is a headstone marking the final resting place of Herbert Henry Dicker, who died just just aged 2 in June 1885. Now, despite passing away over 130 years ago, regular teddy bears and toy trucks are left on his grave. They've been found there afresh once a month for the past 8 years. Scarily, historians claim that Herbert has no living relatives in the area. David Brooks of the Tree Fully Library said, "How the toys are getting on there, I have no idea. We're all wondering what it is. Perhaps Herbert's breaking the bonds of the grave and going out and stealing toys." While I think that Brooks was joking, you do have to wonder who actually is leaving these toys. Is it a ghost thing? If it is a real person doing it, how are they doing so without being noticed, and what is their motive? It's also just occurred to me that 2 of the last stories took place in June, and it's June right now, so maybe June is an unprecedented spooky month. I'd say the usual month of spooks are like October through December, but June? What a dark horse. Coming into number 5, we have The Old One. To me that sounds like the title of a haha oh no video, and I love it. Good old Siberia is always throwing up the goods, isn't it? Siberia, you know I love talking about the permafrost, but I'm not doing that today. So in December 2017, an angler made a discovery. They pulled up a 4,500-year-old load of children's toys from a river, and I have to say they were pretty terrifying, but also cool, but again, also terrifying. This is the figure of a pagan god that historians think was used as a rattle for children to ward off evil spirits. That's great and everything, but honestly to me it looks very terrifying in itself. You can also see images of the back of it, and it looks like it has long hair and fish scales. Fisherman Nikolay Tarasov was hailed for making the catch of a lifetime, as the figure was one of the oldest children's toys ever found to date, but still, it's very, very scary. I can't feel my face when I'm with you, probably because I don't have a face, which is why. Join me at number 4 amid my dismay. It's gonna haunt me for the rest of my days. Redditor Leeble found this absolute horror show in their attic and posted the image to the social media site Reddit to express their distress. I mean, honestly, what happened here? I dread to think. I don't think I ever wanted to know what was going on behind a baby doll's face. A plastic doll skeleton? It's worse than I thought. Was this doll destroyed by a dog and then stuffed in the attic to be found years later, or did something living in the attic gnaw on it up there? The doll's hands, feet, and knees have been obliterated. Yeah, its oversized t-shirt is fine. I'm honestly not sure I understand, but like, I don't think I want to because this is too creepy. I'd rather just forget it. Are you ready for another horrifying attic find? At number 3, we have this sassy-eyed smiler. I'm just gonna come in strong with this one. You're legitimately going to have to accept it. Here it is! Redditor Idlewild Girl found this in her attic, and I am absolutely not okay with it. This is a bad monkey. I actually like this monkey even less than Miss Coulter's golden monkey and Philip Pullman's dark materials, and that's a bad monkey. Why is it giving a shifty eye? I don't know, like what is that side eye about? Do you think that that fur is also made from real monkey fur? If so, again, do not want. A smile that doesn't reach the eyes, to me, I can't think of anything worse. I have to say though, it gets arguably worse at number 2. We have another monkey, and this one has a miniature symbol. LCD sound system fans watching? Anyone? 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 If you are, then get ready for the floor because this monkey is not legit. Look at it. It wants you to DIE. Redditor Mostly Grapes posted this image with the caption, "So I found this monkey in the attic." And honestly, I think the ellipsis at the end of that sentence speaks volumes. Volumes! So visually, there really is a lot to unpack here. I would say namely its feet attached by metal spikes and its painted red nails. It's a glamorous monkey. Also, the fact that it looks like it was wearing a fur sweater, whatever's happening on the top of its head, its sunken bloodshot eyes, and its freaking horrifying exposed teeth. What is happening? I don't like it. The monkey is grimacing hard, and honestly, I get it. The Redditor who posted it wrote, "At first I moved it into the living room right next to the bedroom, but when you're alone in an old farm in the middle of nowhere, that does not really work out, so I put it in a box and stored it in the barn instead." Babe, I would say sink it. Sink it in a lake. One commenter responded, "If it starts clapping, someone's gonna die." I don't like it, I wish I could undo seeing it, but I can't. Finally, this story is sketchy, but it is one of the most horrifying toys I've ever seen in my life, so I imagine finding it would have definitely been heart attack inducing. Coming into number 1, we have Key Baby. Okay, close your eyes. Are they closed? Okay, good. No, yours are open. Close them. Close your eyes. Now, while your eyes are closed, imagine the most terrible sight you possibly can. You got it? Okay. Now open your eyes. Did anyone see this by any chance? To me, this straight up looks like some kind of musical baby human centipede experiment. Who wants to play the baby keyboard? Not I, good fellow, not I. Finding this would legitimately ruin my life. Okay, please take it away. Thank you.
Number 10. Stalker Shrine. A group of housemates made a strange and unnerving discovery when they decided to venture into the attic of their rented home. They found what appears to be the shrine of a stalker, complete with discarded clothes, faded photographs on the walls, and sealed bags containing unused plasters, cigarette ends, and what seems to be human hair. Honestly, if it wasn't there for all of us to see, you'd have to believe it was made up for a horror film, said Matt Martin, whose girlfriend is one of the renters. He added, the film photos on the wall appear to be from the 1990s at some point and show a football player and another bloke. There were also some mystery liquids in bags attached to the wall, but it's not even worth finding out what they were. The group informed the estate agents, who in turn told the landlord. Apparently, the landlord was warned by builders who renovated the house that there was something strange up there, but they must have never been up to check. The group also contacted the police about what they discovered. They added, we called the hotline and they pretty much just said if there's no body parts, don't worry about it. But no offense, I would be worried about it. That is completely unnerving. Number 9. A mummy. A young boy from Germany played in his grandparents' attic when he discovered a set of suspicious looking boxes. When the boy inquired about the boxes, neither his father nor grandma knew what they contained. They opened them and in the largest box contained a real mummy. The mummy, carefully packed in a wooden crate, was placed inside a sarcophagus complete with hieroglyphic adornments. The family later discovered that the item belonged to their grandfather, who had traveled to North Africa when relics from ancient Egypt were in demand. Curious to discover if the mummy was real, the young boy's father took the object to Berlin to show expert archaeologists. Now, I feel like that's just kind of gross, knowing that you've been living with essentially a dead body. Ugh. And if the movies are anything to go by, that family should have kept the mummy inside the coffin to avoid a huge curse. Number 8. Ghost footprints. A Reddit user wrote about their creepy experience by saying, when we first moved into my house, the house I currently reside in 20 years ago, I wandered up to the attic to stack some boxes. Most of the attic is covered in that white powdery stuff that you're not supposed to walk on, or else you might fall through the floor. The old owners put wooden planks over the beams on half of the attic so we could walk there and stack storage and everything. The creepy thing is, there were several large footprints in the powder. When I showed my dad, he was just as baffled as I was, because again, if anyone stepped there, they would have fallen right through. And the footprints were between the beams, as if whoever was there stepped over the beams, which would have been the only stable parts to walk on. The footprints are still there 20 years later, and it still weirds me out. It would weird me out too, and I think they have a giant ghost living in that attic. Number 7. A strange collection. Being at your grandparents' house can be fun, until it isn't. This user said, my grandparents' house is over 150 years old and used to be a post office. I wanted to go up there my whole life, and when I finally did, I found a suitcase full of hair, an old piece of a clock, some 1920s underwear and clothing, and a couple of old trunks, mostly empty, but a couple of pictures and one with hair. My papa used to say if I went upstairs or heard a creak in the house, that an old bald-headed woman was sitting up there in her rocking chair waiting to get me. Really creeped me out as a kid, still won't go up there at night alone, and let me just say, they're braver than me because I just wouldn't go up there in general. Number 6. A python. If you're afraid of snakes, then this is your worst nightmare. When an Idaho family moved into their new house, they were shocked when an installation crew discovered a 3-foot-long African ball python. So what's so scary about the snake? In Idaho and even the larger United States, pythons are extremely rare. People import exotics into the country through special rights, but the good thing was that because of the attic's dry heat, the snake was dead and well preserved for about 2 years. With the deadly snake no longer a threat to the family, they inquired to whether the previous owner owned it as a pet. To their amazement, no one had any idea how the python could have ended up in the house. And all I can say story is, thank God it wasn't alive. Number 5. Henry VI's head. Yep, just his whole head, chilling in someone's attic. Let me explain the events that led to this. King Henry VI ruled France in 1589. One of his most notable achievements was ending the war between Catholic and Protestant citizens. By royal decree, Henry VI introduced a policy of religious tolerance, bringing peace and earning the title of Le Bon Roi, or the Good King. But in 1610, Henry VI was assassinated because of his beliefs. When the monarch fell and the French Revolution took over, the remains of monarchs were destroyed. But as fate would have it, Henry VI's head survived. In 1919, a photographer purchased the royal's head from an auction, and in 1955, Jacques Bellinaire, a tax collector, became the new owner. In 2010, the same royal head surfaced again after it was discovered preserved in an attic. With the aid of computers and forensics, Philippe Charrier, an anthropologist and medical doctor, proved that the head belonged to Henry VI. Number 4. Baby carriages. What happens to baby carriages after kids grow up? You can put them in storage or sell them. Not, I don't know, put dead animals in them. Well, that's what these people did. You heard that right. A team of investigators stumbled upon a collection of vintage baby carriages with some appalling occupants. Each carriage had a well-preserved small animal corpse swaddled perfectly and placed within the compartment. The spooky discovery at a 200-year-old farmhouse in Ossing, New York was shocking to say the least. They found a total of 10 animals, including dogs, cats, raccoons, and squirrels. The careful planning and detail suggests that the creative or sick mind that conjured the idea designed the scene intentionally. Vintage houses are known to harbor some strange things, but this discovery takes it to a whole new level. Personally, if I came across this in my attic, I think I would cry. Number 3. The photo. One woman has been searching for answers after discovering a creepy picture hidden underneath a box in her attic. She explained how she was clearing out the family's vacation home when she came across a scratched up Polaroid with the words, "Do you see him?" written on it. Creeped out by her discovery, she has taken to Reddit to see whether anyone can make out a figure in the image. She said, "I found it while cleaning out my family vacation home. I tried cleaning the picture as much as I could, but it's really scratched up. I can't really even see anything, just an outline of a house, and I don't see an outline of a person. I will try to look for more." She went on to explain how a couple lived in the house before her family bought it as their vacation home. But her dad tasked her with cleaning it out so they could put it on the market to sell. While most users urged her to stop looking for him and get out of there, others tried to invert the photograph to see whether they could see a man hiding in the image. Number 2. The message. A man claims to have made a disturbing discovery in the attic space of his girlfriend's house, and it's terrifying. In a post shared to Reddit, a man shared a picture of what he unearthed while exploring his partner's attic. Hidden in the back beyond the beams, plaster, and gathering cobwebs, he found a simple yet terrifying message scratched into the back wall. The discovery of a pentagram's 5-pointed star associated with the worship of Satan alongside the name Nick. Now, the discovery might have been okay were it not for the fact that, according to the man sharing the image, his name just so happens to be Nick. One commenter wrote, "As a fellow Nick, I'd say get the F out of there, run brother run." But another user noted that the use of the name Nick may have more serious connotations. Old Nick is another name for the devil, they wrote. And they're right. The Collins Dictionary confirms Old Nick as a jocular name for Satan. Other people are suggesting that the man's girlfriend likely carved it in herself and is just lying to him. However, some wondered if they were being a bit too quick to dismiss it. You know, in horror movies when nobody believes the guy trying to warn everyone, we are totally them, someone commented. I'm sorry, but what are the chances that it was his exact name? That is some creepy stuff, let me tell you. And coming in at number 1 is the X. Okay, so you've heard of random people living in others' attics, but what if you found out your ex was living there? Well, that actually happened to one Pittsburgh woman. The single mother of 5 discovered her ex of 12 years living in her attic. A few weeks before the discovery, the woman noticed things going awry in her house, but she couldn't explain the changes. On the weirdest days, she would find a blanket in the basement or a toilet seat left up, and even hear some unusual noises around the house. Then, one Saturday morning, she heard a noise coming from her bedroom. When she went to look, she found her ex standing there. Her ex allegedly grabbed her and put a hand over her mouth. She managed to push him away and ran outside screaming, prompting several neighbors to call 911. It said that the woman had obtained a restraining order against the man bearing him from having any contact with his ex or her children. Speaking with WPXI News, the woman said she had a weird feeling that someone had been in her home. She said, "I had an intuition about it, but I ignored it, I brushed it aside. I didn't want to seem paranoid, but I should have trusted my instincts because I was right." Once police arrived, officers searched the house and found her ex hiding under some clothes on the second floor. According to the Post-Gazette, the suspect told officers he had been staying in the home for about 2 weeks without the woman knowing, gaining access through an unlocked side door. He said he was coming and going from the house because he was tired of being homeless. Now that is truly terrifying, and now I never want to date anyone ever again.
Coming in at number 10, we have the convict ex-boyfriend. Okay, so you made a few bad decisions and you hook up with a person who has made even worse decisions. They're sent to jail and you think, you know what, thankfully I am free and I can live out my life on the right side of the law while they serve their time. You put them down to a bad mistake and you move on with your life. Only, well, this is where things get awkward. They end up secretly living in your attic. A woman in South Carolina found her ex, who she'd broken up with 12 years ago, hiding in her roof. Tracy thought that she had animals in the attic, but no. When she asked her sons to go up and check, they found a strange man living among a bundle of coats up there. It gets worse. It was discovered that he had defecated into several Route 44 Sonic cups and that he had been peeping through a vent at Tracy in her bedroom. I wonder what would have happened had her sons not scared him away. Following the incident, the man escaped, but police were seeking him for questioning. Coming in at number 9, we have slaves bound in the attic. You may have heard of the name Delphine LaLaurie from one of our top 10 evil people lists. What this woman did with her attic was absolutely abominable. Delphine was a New Orleans Creole socialite. She had a mansion and she loved throwing a party. From the outside, she seemed like a French Quarter darling. However, she was hiding a dark secret. She was keeping slaves bound up in the attic and abusing them. Things weren't much better downstairs either, as she had chained her cook to the stove and was beating her with a stick. When a fire broke out at the LaLaurie home in 1834, officers went into the attic as they evacuated the house. They then found 7 mutilated slaves being stretched in torture devices. Other reports say that Negro slaves were made to wear spiked collars. Delphine fled town after her depraved attic scene was found, and after she left, officers dug up further bodies in the house grounds, presumably of other slaves who died in the torture room. Despite the fire damage, the house still stands in New Orleans today, and it is reported that it is deeply haunted. Speaking of haunted attics, coming in at number 8, we have a ghost in the attic. Does Edward Jenner haunt a British attic? Possibly. Edward Jenner was the pioneer human who basically invented vaccination after discovering how to stave off smallpox. This man, who died in 1823 in Berkeley, UK, saved so many lives with his medical discoveries. Anyway, his old house in Gloucestershire has been turned into a museum, and rumour has it that the attic is haunted. In 2009, these pictures were taken of a spectre passing through. There is some debate as to whether or not the ghost is of Jenner himself. If you look very closely, it does seem like a rather portly chap sitting in a chair between 2 beds. The museum curator was quote-unquote flabbergasted by the image. Coming into number 7, we have a snake in the attic. I do not like a snake. I know that that's sacrilege for a Slytherin to say, but they do freak me out. So it's not so much that they're slithery and slippery or you can't trust them, it's more that, you know, a lot of them can kill you by squeezing you or injecting you with fatal venom, or some can just straight up devour you. Imagine coming home to see this. Who knew? This video was uploaded to YouTube by WSPA7 News, and yeah, no thanks. Imagine coming home to see this hellish sight. A man from Greenwood, South Carolina came home to see this and nobody's okay. You think it's a rope or something? But no, it's 2 snakes intertwined slithering down from the attic. It's one thing being in the attic, it's another thing escaping from it. Get TF out of my life, snakes. Spooky stuff is always being found in attics, and I can't say that I'm here for it. Why don't people check their attics thoroughly to see that weird stuff isn't going on up there, or there aren't any cursed items just casually hanging around waiting to strike? Why, guys? So with that in mind, we are talking about one of the most horrifying things to ever have been found in an attic, in my opinion. At number 6, we have the Anguished Man painting. On first look, I am baffled as to why this painting might be called the Anguished Man. He looks so friendly and pleasant. Just joking, he literally looks like he wants to suck out your soul to replace the one that he's missing. Okay, but like, Imagine finding this literal nightmare-inducing gem in your attic. No thanks. The legend goes that it was painted with the artist's own blood mixed with oil shortly before they killed themselves. The owner, Sean Robinson, was handed down the painting by his grandmother, who had it in her attic for 25 years. Ugh. On the few times that Scott has been brave enough to display the picture, he and his family have reported strange goings-on, such as bangs, voices, strange smells, and bad feelings. I don't like me a bad feeling. They even reported that the painting moves of its own accord. Coming into number 5, we have bats in the attic. Okay, a bat isn't anywhere near as scary as, say, a spooky haunted painting that moves of its own accord, sure, but finding bats in the attic can turn your existence into a real-life horror story. Bats in the attic can happen and are especially common in North America. What you don't want is any bat in the attic. Why? Because it can lead to an infestation. What does that look like? Ooh, wow. I mean, even if you aren't scared of bats, it's pretty horrifying. Bats! Not only are they closely associated with Mr. Dracula himself, but actually they pose more danger than the Anguished Man to your health. Do you want to know where the saying bat crazy comes from? Bat excrement, or guano. This can send you crazy. It carries a fungus that, when becoming airborne, can make you very, very sick. There are several cases of guano-related deaths each year. Oh, and bats are known to carry rabies. So if there's a bat in your attic, you know it's time to call pest control. If you don't, your life maybe will turn into a horror movie. Coming in at number 4, we have live grenades. Can you imagine having functioning grenades in your attic for 40 years and never even noticing? How terrifying. In March 2014, 4 live hand grenades were found in the attic of a home in Oak Creek, Milwaukee. The grenades were over 40 years old and were in an unsettled and deteriorated state. The homeowners called the police when they found them, and the bombs were taken to a remote location and detonated, causing what locals described as loud explosions. I'll say. You know, this list is a mixed bag of spooks and real dangers, and this one definitely falls into the latter. Coming into number 3, we have cancer in the attic. If you want to hear about scary attics, let's take a moment to discuss asbestos, the silent killer in your roof. Asbestos was used as the primary insulator in homes from the mid-1900s until around the 1980s, when most countries phased it out because of its very strong link to cancer. Asbestos is illegal in Australia, but in the United States of America, it's still going, despite its link to so many deaths. One horror story comes from a St. Louis plumber who spent 2 days installing asbestos insulation in the attic in the 1950s, only to be told 30 years later that those 2 days were his death sentence, that they'd caused him to develop a rare lung cancer. He sued producers W.R. Grace for $2.5 million, but he died shortly after. A Vox article says that 125 million people are exposed to asbestos and around 100,000 die as a result annually. A sad tale of scandal and love. Up next at number 2, we have a woman locked in the attic for 25 years. Our story starts in Paris in 1876. Blanche Monnier was a 25-year-old aristocratic socialite who fell in love. As we know with love, you don't always fall for the most suitable people, and the man that she fell for was an older, broke gentleman who her mother thought was unfit. Despite what her mum thought, Blanche was determined to marry the man she loved anyway. Suddenly though, she vanished without a trace. Her family publicly mourned her, however, it was all a ruse. It turned out that her mother locked her in the attic and she wouldn't be discovered for another 25 years following an anonymous tip-off. Blanche's lover died in 1885, yet the woman was kept locked up until 1901 when she was freed by Parisian police. She was found covered in food scraps and feces and laying on a rotten straw bed. Blanche weighed just 55 pounds when she was found, so just 25 kilos or just shy of 4 stone. Very thin. The poor woman had been held hostage in her own filth for 2.5 decades. Finally, coming in at number 1, a truly scary attic story, we have the Spider-Man of Denver. Theodore Edward Coneys was born in 1882 and committed murder in 1941, becoming known as the Denver Spider-Man. Theodore became a drifter and was frail his whole life. In September 1941, he broke into a former acquaintance's house with the intention of asking him for money. On arriving at 73-year-old Philip Peters' home, he had intended to steal food and money, but in the end, he found a narrow attic cubbyhole where he lived for 5 weeks, stealing food while Peter was out. One day, Peter found him in the house and hit him with a cane. In return, Theodore hit him and bludgeoned him to death with a pistol, beating him into a bloody pulp. Police found the elderly man's body the next day, but Theodore kept on living in the home undetected for a further 9 months. He even drove out 2 other female residents who had become convinced that the house was haunted. It was haunted alright by the living murderer of their family member. Eventually the police did find the killer and he was sentenced to life in prison. He died in 1967.
10. A tombstone. And I'm not talking about... I'm talking about literally the thing that has all your contact information on it after you die. It was labeled Judith, wife of Josiah Ambrose. She died August 7th, 1864. It's unknown why the grave marker was stashed away in someone's attic. Some of the comics suggest that because the gravestone was dated all the way back in 1864, that the body might be buried on the property. So the gravestone was removed because that's obviously not good for the market value. Other people are saying that it might be a prop. All this stuff kind of creeps me out. I don't know why you would want to be buried. Like, I want to get cremated, and then I want to have my ashes spread over a Five Guys. I love Five Guys. Number 9. Do you see him? This one literally gave me chills. Let's say you have a nice vacation home, you go there a few times a year, you're Mr. Moneybags, life's good. That's until you go up to your attic and you find this. A pitch black Polaroid with scratches all over it. And the message, do you see him? Oh my god, this creeps me out. How did it get there? Was it placed there before you bought the place? Or did someone come in and leave it for you? I've broken it down to 2 possible scenarios. 1. The picture was taken by a child in an attempt to make a portrait of their sibling and their finger was over the lens and then they wrote this cute little message on it. Or 2. This is the beginning of a person's torment from a demonic presence. As time goes on, the image will slowly become clearer until it's the last horrifying thing they see before they die. It's the only 2 logical options. 8. A dead bird with a secret. All sorts of creepy animals and creepy crawlies can work their way into your home. It's happened to me. I used to live in a place with 4 guys. There was mice in the basement and raccoons in the ceiling. Paying rent really makes you respect your parents. But we never found anything as crazy as this. Genre posted on Imager back in 2014 a picture of a pigeon's skeleton. Not particularly scary, but what is much freakier is what's attached to its leg. It has a little red case on it with a coded message. It's suspected to be a World War II secret code that no one has been able to crack. A historian by the name of Gord Young claimed to have solved it, but those claims turned out to be false. So really have no idea what this message says. It could be a deep, dark secret, or my Five Guys order. I love Five Guys. Number 7. A Ouija board. Have you ever wanted to talk to the dead? Or mess around with demonic forces? Are you tempted by the dark arts or intrigued by evil? No, me neither. I want to watch MTV series and order food on Uber Eats and be told that I'm pretty. That's it. So if I found this in my attic, I would freak out. A couple found an antique wooden Ouija board in their home. They found it in pristine condition as if someone had been taking care of it. Their comments on the finding were, "We haven't disturbed the Ouija board." I would disturb it. I would throw it to the bottom of the ocean like the end of Jumanji. Number 6. Kennedy assassination newspaper. I mean, I can understand why someone would keep this. It was a very important moment in history. America was rattled by this. The president was shot from a grassy knoll. But let's go full conspiracy theory. What if the previous owners were the shooters? And they kept the clipping as a trophy, leaving it behind as a clue for some curious investigator to follow the trail. Probably not, but it would be super creepy to walk up in your attic and see a snapshot from one of the most horrific moments ever broadcasted. I would probably try to sell it on eBay. Number 5. Adolf Hitler's record collection. So this isn't much of a message as it is music, but I think we could all argue that there's some messages in songs. One of the most surprising things about this record collection is it contained Russian and Jewish musicians, which apparently Hitler considered subhuman. A strong rule should be if you're racist, you don't get to enjoy other people's culture. You stay in the corner while the rest of us eat pho and listen to K-pop. What really scares me about this isn't the music, but what he was doing while he played it. What occupied his hands right after he put the needle down on the record? Number 4. If you have a weak stomach, do not enter. This message was found in a Norwegian home by Reddit user MyNdig. How did they find it? Well, the story goes that they went up to their attic and found a door with a padlock on it. Neither of them had the key, so they got some bolt cutters to stamp it off. In the space, they found a lamp alarm, a map of Western Europe, a lonely doll shoe, and a note that said in Norwegian, if you have a weak stomach, do not enter. A super creepy room. Why would someone have something like this with a disturbing note? It turns out it was a World War II safe room. It could have potentially been used by Norwegian people to hide from Nazis and listen to BBC radio reports that weren't Nazi propaganda. The room was large enough to fit a whole family in it. Could you imagine how terrified you would be hiding from Nazis with your whole family? Number 3. A father's secret. This one we snagged off of the creepy subreddit, and it's a pretty wild story. Think back to when you were a teenager. You're at home, you're probably a little bored, so you start snooping around your house. You end up in the attic, and you find a chest full of letters. Seems pretty interesting, so you start flipping through them. And then you recognize the handwriting. It's your grandmother's, and all the letters are referencing being in jail, and all the letters are addressed to someone with the same name as your dad. This is exactly what happened to this Redditor. After making the frightening discovery, he took the evidence downstairs to his mom and asked her all about it. She took some prying, but then she confessed that his father had been imprisoned for murder. You think you know a guy, and then he's a murderer. After that, you would win all those arguments though. They're like, my dad could beat up your dad. Like, no, my dad could beat up your dad for sure. Number 2, creepy piggy bank. Kids are always doing the silliest things, like coloring on walls, talking to imaginary friends, decapitating their toys. I actually did this when I was a kid. I pulled the head off my Max Steel action figure and then I cried when I couldn't get it back on. I'm not sure if this kid felt the same remorse. This is off the website Boredom Therapy, and this image is haunting. It seems like some little girl got creative with her arts and crafts and glued the severed head of one of her dolls to the top of this jar. She then labeled the jar with what I assume is the doll's name, Holly. Either that, or a message to some girl named Holly that she's gonna cut off her head and stuff her body full of coins. This is super creepy. It's basically the villain from the original Toy Story if he was more financially responsible. Number 1, Blanche Monnier. Now this last one wasn't exactly a message found in an attic, but an anonymous letter led people straight to an attic. Blanche Monnier is a very unsettling case. The year is 1901. In France, police receive an anonymous tip that someone is being held captive. When they went to investigate, they found Blanche Monnier. The now 52-year-old woman had been locked in her attic by her mother for 25 years. Blanche was almost a skeleton. She was malnourished. She hadn't seen sunlight the entire time she was held captive. Her mother was arrested and Blanche was transferred to a hospital. The saddest part about this is I feel no justice was served because Blanche's mother died 15 days after her arrest, and there was no time for a trial to be held.
Starting us off, in at number 10, we have A Terrible Friend. Back in 1941, Theodore Coney landed himself in some financial troubles, so he went to visit an old friend that he hasn't seen in a while. But once he got to the house, it was unlocked, and he realized that no one was home. Apparently he doesn't have any manners because he just decided to let himself in. As we were exploring the house, he came across a small door that led to a tiny room in the attic. He decided to live in there because it was much better than living on the streets in the wintertime. Well, keep in mind that this guy never asked his friend for permission. He would sneak out of his hiding place whenever his friend left the house, and he would shower, cook himself meals and watch TV. But one day his friend caught him in the act, and out of panic, Coney shot his friend to death. But instead of fleeing the crime scene and getting the heck out of there, he went right back to his little room. Eventually the police found him hiding in the attic, and he was arrested for the murder. The worst neighbor takes us to number 9. Over in China, a man started to notice that a lot of his food and personal items started to go missing without any explanation. He lived alone and he was always diligent about locking his door. But when he tried to get into his unit, he was locked out of his apartment, so he decided to call the police. When they searched the apartment, they found a hole in the kitchen ceiling that actually led up to the attic of a 3-story apartment building. Inside of the attic, they found a homeless person who has been sneaking into people's apartments, and he would do this to try to steal money and cook for himself. In total, this guy actually managed to steal $320, but I bet he was able to feed himself delicious meals for a very long time. The stranger who claimed she got permission to live in his attic brings us to number 8. A man named Davis Wallman had no idea what he would uncover when he went to his attic one day. He went up there to investigate a bunch of weird noises, but to his surprise, the door to his own attic was locked. So sadly enough, he decided to knock on the door, but to his surprise, someone actually answered it.
Who the heck are you? Why are you in my house? And she keeps kind of going, this is my house. I live here. I've been here for 3 days. Jimmy said I could live here. Jimmy said I could stay here.
The homeowner quickly called the police, but the strange house guest managed to pack up her stuff and escape before the police were able to come in. How did she think that this was her house? Didn't she see all the pictures on the wall didn't belong to her? I mean, what a weird woman. Creeping into number 7, we have a crazy ex-boyfriend. Back in December of 2010, a woman was getting pretty worried because strange things started happening in her house, and she was almost positive that her crazy ex-boyfriend was the one responsible. Well, one night she went to plug in her phone, but when she went to get it, her phone was gone. She managed to call the police using a landline, and the police arrived at her house and they were able to find someone in the attic. They found her ex-boyfriend hiding underneath some old insulation. He was living there for a long time, spying on his ex-girlfriend. He took her cell phone to check if she was talking to other guys, and he watched her daily. He was arrested, and as it turns out, this wasn't the first time that he broke into an ex-girlfriend's house without their permission. Is this real life right now? I mean, wow, can this guy not just take a hint? I mean, move on. Download Tinder, maybe you'll meet someone new. But oh wait, you're in prison now, so good luck with that. Unless you can like swipe prison inmates or something. I don't know how that. Tinder for prisoners? A food thief is caught in at number 6. I think the only thing worse than having a stranger secretly living in your attic would be if they were also stealing your food. I mean, I hate to go grocery shopping, and if someone stole my food, it means I just have to go grocery shopping more often. I would be pretty upset. I mean, you're already getting free rent. The least you can do is go to the corner store and buy your own damn food. Well, for a man living in Manhattan, he was getting pretty agitated when his food started to mysteriously disappear. I mean, living in Manhattan can't be cheap. So when your expensive food starts to go missing, I'd be pretty upset as well. Which I'm gonna say was a pretty bad idea. Nothing good can ever come from accusing your girlfriend of eating your food. But anyways, I guess he didn't believe her because he set up night vision cameras around his kitchen, and to his surprise, he saw a woman climbing down from the attic and started to make herself a midnight snack. It's unclear how she managed to get inside, but apparently she's been living there for more than 2 weeks. The opposite of Santa Claus comes in at number 5. A family from Pennsylvania noticed that some of their Christmas presents started to go missing on Christmas Eve. They also heard strange noises coming from the attic, and they really believed that someone had broken into their house. They decided to call the police, but they couldn't find anything. On the following day, the family found footprints in the closet of one of the bedrooms that led to the attic. They called the police again. By this time, they brought a dog with them. That's when they found a man living in the attic. Apparently, he used to be a tenant that lived in the other part of the duplex, but he was kicked out, but I guess he moved back in. So instead of leaving and moving on with his life, he moved his things upstairs. Well, he was convicted and sentenced to 23 months in jail, but at least now he is getting rent-free and free food, right? Number 4 takes us to a man who lived in a family's attic, and he snuck into a 14-year-old girl's room at night. I mean, this sounds like every parent's worst nightmare coming true. A man from Tennessee was secretly living in a family's attic, and he would visit their 14-year-old daughter at night. It's just so creepy. Apparently the two of them planned on running away together, but in the meantime, they thought it would be best if he just squatted in the attic while she went to high school. Well, one night the mother was shocked when she saw the man standing at the top of the stairs looking down at her. He quickly ran to the daughter's room and went up to his small home in the attic, but it was too late. The mother called the police and he was arrested for aggravated criminal trespassing. It sounds like this 14-year-old needs to be taught a lesson about picking boyfriends, because he definitely doesn't sound like a keeper. An unwanted house guest is up next at number 3. Do you ever wonder what really happens in your house when you're not there? Well, for one woman, she found out the hard way when she called in sick to work and she was home all day with a stranger who was watching her every move. The day went by without anything out of the ordinary, but around 7 p.m., when she went in for a bath, she looked up towards the ceiling and saw that the crawl space to the attic was open, and she saw that someone had been watching her from the attic. Apparently this creeper has been living in her house for the past 6 months. I don't want to terrify you, but if you ever feel like someone is watching you, chances are you're probably right. A new homeowner breaks into our list at number 2. I've heard of squatters and we've seen people living in strangers' attic, but this next story takes the cake. When a man returned home from vacation, he would never thought that he would come home and find strangers have taken over his entire house. When he got home, he saw a strange dog in his backyard, and then out of nowhere, he heard a baby crying inside of his house. He doesn't have a baby. As he went from room to room, he noticed that things had been moved around. He heard people in the house, so he went outside and immediately called 911. When they knocked on the door, a strange woman answered. She was wearing his wife's clothes and acted like she owned the place. The uninvited house guest was later arrested and charged with burglary, neglect of a child, and petty larceny. And guess what? This isn't the first time that something like this has ever happened. Apparently the police get a ton of phone calls about people returning from vacation only to find out that strangers are now living in their house. The ex-boyfriend who just won't quit comes in at number 1. A single mother of 5 lived in a house over in South Carolina. By the end of 2012, she started to notice weird noise coming from her attic and nails were popping out of the ceiling. She went to the attic to investigate, but she wasn't able to find anything, out of the ordinary. She still had a pit in the bottom of her stomach and she just knew that something wasn't right. As the days went on, the plaster on the ceiling started to fall off and she kept hearing some strange noises coming from the attic. She took her nephew and she went to look in the attic again. This time she saw her crazy ex-boyfriend hiding in the corner and it looked like he'd been living up there for like almost a month. He obviously fled the scene and police weren't able to track him down. So if you guys are living in South Carolina right now, you might want to check up on your attic, make sure that this guy isn't sleeping there at nighttime.
Starting off number 10 now, we have The Dark. This one was posted to Reddit by Ace Flores X, who said they found what you're about to see in the attic of their vacation home. Here it is, a Polaroid picture of darkness with the question, "Do you see him?" written underneath. What? How creepy is that? Why is it all scratched up as well? It looks like they just kept scratching away at the darkness, or perhaps the person they could see. Maybe they went mad because nobody else could see the person in the picture. To be honest, I don't want to see anybody in that picture. I'm really hoping it isn't one of those things where someone will appear if you stare long enough. Perhaps it's time to move on. Moving on now to number 9, we have Voodoo. This one was posted to the No Sleep subreddit. The person who posted it has since deleted their account. Suspicious, but this is what they said. "Okay, so I was clearing out my family member's attic in their very old home. I find this wedged inside the wall. It looks obviously handmade and its eyes and mouth are the creepiest. It also has a small pin needle sticking into its back. I can't make out any writing or tags on the doll, but it does have a small wooden stand underneath with some odd engravings. The hair also appears to be real. Check these pictures out. What do you think?" What is that? What is it? Is that real hair for its beard? I don't even want to know. I think it's a voodoo doll, right? It's gotta be. It looks quite realistic and it has a pin coming out of its back. I don't know very much about voodoo, but I do know if there's a pin sticking out of a doll's back, maybe run a mile. Moving on to number 8 now, we have The Murder. This one comes from Reddit user Gobo in Outer Space. They said, "While clearing out an attic space, I found some 30-plus-year-old letters written to my dad from his mother. She had died 20 years or so before. I read the letters and realized they were written to him while he was in prison. I asked my mom about the letters and she admitted to me that my dad had been in prison for murder. My dad still doesn't know I know." Okay, talk about family secrets there. How would you guys feel if you found out that one of your parents was a convicted murderer? That's a lot to deal with. Would you confront them about it? Or would you just try and forget and carry on like nothing happened? It's going to be pretty intense either way. Coming in at number 7 now, we have Backbone. This one comes from Reddit user Haplessru. They said, a girl I know went into the basement of the old house that she was renting and found a spine in the ceiling. It was an unfinished ceiling. She called the landlord and he quickly said it was a dog spine, took it and left. Later she went to check out a noise in the attic, and when she opened the attic door, a ton of crayons showered down on top of her. Okay, so let's ignore the crayons bit for now. I think that's kind of beside the point. Let's focus on the spine in the attic. Who is the first person you would call if you found a spine in the attic of a house you were renting? I think most people would say the police. You'd be very suspicious of your landlord. Instead, this person calls the landlord, who swings by to collect it and tells them it's a dog spine before quickly leaving. Okay, and you're just gonna take their word for it, are you? It might just be a dog spine, that's fair, that's still quite weird though. But if it's not, they may have just helped a murderer get away with a murder, and it might be their spine next. I don't know, just my theory. Next up, number 6 now, we have the attic. Yes, this one is called the attic because it's not really what they found in the attic that's scary, it's the attic itself. It was posted to Reddit by user Nukestorm. They said, there's a up room in the attic where I just moved into, pretty sure nothing good happened there. Well, as you can see from the first few pictures, it looks normal at first, but soon we enter a room. The room looks like a cell for containing a person, keeping them captive. There was a small cot, a shelf, and a tiny window, and that was it. The door had a metal grate on the inside and outside of it, and the ceiling was a little over 4 feet. What do you think that room was used for? It can get quite concerning if you let your imagination run away with you there. Moving on to number 5 now, we have baby. In 2012, Reddit user Soul Biscuits made a post called Mysterious Picture of a Creepy Baby We Found in Our Attic. Here's the picture. Yes, I think I can confirm that is creepy. Creepy confirmed. Another Redditor called And Every Breath posted some helpful context to the picture. He said it was from the Victorian era and added that back then a child gets very sick and it's obvious that she or he will die shortly. Before calling friends and family or funeral directors, the family would rush to find a photographer. Sometimes the child will be photographed alive and extremely ill. These are disturbing, but mostly sad. That being said, the photographer didn't always get there in time, and thus we have pictures of dead children. Well, I hoped an explanation would make me feel better about that picture, but I think it makes it a little bit more disturbing if I'm honest. Next up, number 4 now, we have One Eye Shut. This one comes from The General 123. They said, I'm a contractor, went on a walkthrough of an estate sale property with a customer and his real estate agent to inspect the house and plan renovations. I climbed into the attic and came face to face with a giant glass eye doll. You know the ones when you lay them back, the eyes close. Damn thing was 4 feet tall, laying on its side and right in my face, with one eye open and one half freaking shut. I was a little weirded out. I told the customer to take a look. He climbed up and was a little freaked out. The real estate agent climbed up and jumped back down screaming. I still chuckle over that one. Well, I'm glad they can chuckle because that sounds more than a little bit scary. A 4-foot doll is massive. I think just seeing that in the dark alone would have scared me, but the eyes, yeah, that would have sent me scuttling back down the attic ladder. Both eyes shut is fine, both eyes open is scary, but one of each, that's pretty terrifying. Don't wink at me, big creepy doll. Close your eyes. Moving on now to number 3, we have Monkey Business. This one was posted to the creepy subreddit by Mostly Grapes. It doesn't need much of an introduction. Let's take a look at the picture. Wow, look at the teeth. Look at the eyes, look at the weird bit of monkey skull coming through the top of its exposed head, look at the creepy nail polished fingers, look at the dislocated monkey paws. It's just pure horror, classic horror. I don't even know what to add other than to tell you guys that the top comment simply says, if it starts clapping, someone is gonna die. And I think that's a fair assessment. My gut reaction when I saw this is that it should be destroyed, but if it's cursed, I think the curse would just get passed on to you. I think that's why this monkey continues to be allowed to exist. Moving on now to number 2, we have the uncle. This one comes from 40-year-old Creeper, that's their username. They said, I lived in a beautiful Victoria house that was so spooky. It had been in my boyfriend's family for many generations. In the attic was tons of clothes from his grandparents, just all boxed up and untouched for a long time. I guess the grandpa fell over and died in the living room, and then a few days later the grandma died in the dining room, both of unknown causes. I found a handwritten journal in the attic which was all stories of his uncle's adventures. His uncle would explore and chart jungles. There was an entry where he found dead cut up bodies of a tribe he thought might be hunting and eating another tribe. When I found a photo of the uncle I was so freaked out. He looked exactly like my boyfriend. They named him after his uncle as well. He always hated that. The family didn't like to talk about the uncle. He went missing in the jungle and they never found a body. We also found an old Victorian photo album of his relatives. If you've ever seen them, they're so spooky. Some of the photos have babies in them that were perfectly crisp and their eyes look glazed over. Since then I learned that it was most likely because the babies were dead when the photos were taken. That house always freaked me out. When I first read this I thought the whole cannibalistic tribe thing was going to be the creepy part of this story, and then it just throws in dead babies in the end right there. That will always raise a scary story by at least 1 point. And finally, number 1 now, we have Separation. This is a short but horrifying one from Rody on Reddit. They're a realtor who said one day they did a property inspection and in their words it turned up a dead body in the attic. It was a suicide. Someone hung themselves. Homeowner thought her husband had left her years ago. I guess he did. Yeah, I mean, I guess he did. That's horrifying though. It's one of those things where you think, how did she not know? Would you guys know there was a dead body in your attic? I don't want to go into the grisly details about how you'd know, but surely you'd know, right? Or maybe it's not as easy to detect these kind of things. Perhaps there are a lot of dead bodies sitting in attics that we don't even know about. As a thought.